Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, working at simplifying things in our lives, one day at a time, one simple step at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today's episode is all about simplifying your life by learning, hands down, the best way to preserve milk. You might not think about it that way, but that's exactly what cheese is. And our expert that we're talking with actually walks us through everything you need to know. Robyn Jackson is a wife, a mother to three, a rancher, and a home cheesemaker in northern British Columbia, Canada. You might know her as Cheese from Scratch, and that's where you can find her on social media and her blog and her YouTube channel. She shares with us today and across all those platforms practical cheese making for absolutely anyone who can learn how to take milk and turn it into the most delicious cheese. You're going to be as excited about this as I am, I think, because I walked into this talk with Robyn today feeling intimidated, feeling like, I'm pretty sure I shouldn't be intimidated and I'm pretty sure I should be able to make hard cheeses, but I just don't know. It's one of those um just one of those things I haven't stepped into and feel like I don't really know anything about it. But after talking to Robyn, I feel empowered and I feel like I absolutely do know about this and I can absolutely do this. And I think you're going to walk away from this talk feeling the same way. So stick with us to the end. You don't want to miss any of that. Robyn is breaking down how to make clabber and what a clabber starter is. She's breaking down the secrets to sourcing the best milk, and she gives us some tips, things I hadn't even thought of, why it's important to really source the best milk and how to do it. And she talks about the fact that there's only four ingredients in cheese, and she explains each of the ingredients and explains the details we need to know about them. The fourth one, by the way, is salt. And we'd even talk about Redmond real salt because you guys know that that is a salt that I am fascinated with. I use it in every way. And she explains why she does use it and then the situation where she doesn't use the best salt on earth and why. And by the way, I just have to pause and tell you, they make more than salt too. They produce some amazing things, some amazing electrolytes, some great seasonings, stuff that I could not go without, honestly. If you want to go to soulyrested.com/salt, you can find out. I think it's my top 12 favorite things that I love to source from Redmond Real Salt. But we talk about lactic bacteria and get into some interesting details about that. And well, you're just going to love it. She is a gem. She's fun to talk with. She's so down to earth. And you can tell she's Canadian whenever she says the word processing. We are processing cheese. But she's great. You're going to love this, guys. Let's dive in. Well, Robyn, I am so glad that you're here with me today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm really excited for this too.
Well, you can't be as excited as I am because cheese making is something I even feel funny saying this, only dabbled in because I don't know if I can even call it that, but I made a few soft cheeses and our family, I mean, if you think you know any dairy fanatic family, I'm pretty sure ours is above that. I mean, cheese is like such a passion of everyone in my family. So I need to know about cheese making. And I see you as the absolute authority on this topic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love cheese making as well. Like our family is same thing. Like we're
Yeah.
invested in having good cheese and having dairy, and that's great that you've made some fresh cheeses and stuff. Like that's an amazing start. And there's lots of families that like start making fresh cheeses, and that's really all they need to make because that's what their family likes and stuff. But it's fun when you
Hmm.
start there and then can kind of dive in and start to learn a little bit more complicated cheeses and just get a few more in your repertoire.
Oh, I want them all. So
Yeah.
teach me everything, Robin. But I will say it's intimidating standing on my side of the topic and looking at what folks like you do. It just seems complicated. I know in my heart of hearts,
Yeah,
it's doable, but
yeah,
it's intimidating.
it really is intimidating. There's so much to know, and it's kind of so it's almost like a taboo subject. Like you think like milk needs to be refrigerated. Like that's how we're taught all the way how we grow up.
Yep.
And so it's kind of intimidating to look at it and be like, okay, I'm just gonna like let milk sit out on the counter and it's gonna be safe to consume and I'm not gonna make my family sick. Yeah, so it is
Right.
really intimidating to get started. But once you start doing it and just kind of really learn the basics, then it becomes less intimidating. It becomes more something that you can do. It's kind of like baking sourdough. Like if I'm sure everybody that listens to this podcast probably bakes
Hmm.
sourdough, but when you start, like it is so intimidating to look at a sourdough recipe and be like, it's going to take me 24 hours to get a loaf of bread out of this. And that doesn't include
Right.
having to feed my starter and doing all these things. But once you actually do it, then you see how simple it actually is. And cheese making is really similar to that.
And that's a great example because with any kind of bread, not even just sourdough,
Yeah.
it's a process that's throughout the day. But as long as you're home, it's literally 2 minutes here. And then in a couple hours, another 2 minutes, right? Like it's not, it doesn't take that much time overall. You just have to be around to be able to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly, and there's quite a few cheese recipes that are like that, like fresh ones and stuff like that. Some of the more complicated, like pressed cheeses and stuff, they're a little bit more hands-on, which, definitely is overwhelming for people, you know, like, if you're gonna go
Hmm.
to make a cheddar cheese, I'm gonna wanna be close to the kitchen for about 6 hours, and that's not all hands-on time, but there's some good amount of hands-on time in that. So that is
Okay.
intimidating as well when you have so many things on your homestead that you're trying to get done, you're like, "How am I even gonna fit this into my life?" So that
Right.
stops people from starting a lot as well.
Okay. And when I said intimidating, I mean, you brought up things I hadn't even thought of. I simply meant just the look of it, like with this giant press and having a big block of cheese you're dealing with, that intimidates me.
Yeah, for sure, and not knowing what kind of equipment you need. You know, when I
Mhm.
first started making cheese, and I can totally relate to being intimidated because I was absolutely intimidated when I started 10 years ago. Like, I have no had nowhere
Really? Wow.
what
Okay.
what to do or how to start. And so I thought that I needed a cheese press to start. So I bought like this cheese making equipment pack kind of that had everything that I
Yep.
needed in it. It had the forms and the cheese press and some cheesecloth, all the kind of things. And a lot of the things in that pack I actually never used or I didn't like.
Wow.
And so it was kind of just like starting and getting that experience under my belt. I really saw what I actually needed and I was kind of able to build my equipment up from there. But you absolutely don't need a cheese press to start making cheese.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that's good to know. And this all really reminds me a lot of kombucha too, which a lot of my audience does not make kombucha. They are interested in it, but it intimidates people so much. And it's the same idea. And whenever I bring out my big fermenter, I'm always telling people, you don't need to have this fermenter though. You really don't. You can literally have a mason jar and a SCOBY, and you can make kombucha. Like that's all you need. So I think it's important for you and I both to keep reminding people of this, that don't be intimidated. You can do this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like cheese making has been done for thousands of years, and it's only like really in the last 100 that there's these need to have equipment that you're going to buy on the cheese
Yeah.
supply store. You know, it's been made in huts, cheese has been pressed under rocks, like it's been made in really, really
Yeah.
simple ways, and we can make them in simple ways if we want to. Sure, fancy things sometimes make it easier, but they're definitely
Sure.
not something that you need to have.
Yeah. Such a good point. I love that you pointed that out. And I mean, also, if there's money to be made, of course, people are going to sell us a kit with cheesecloth in it that we don't need, right? I mean, of course they are.
For sure, yeah. You're like, "Ah, you
Yeah.
could just use a flour sack towel that you have in your kitchen already."
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So, what are the main ingredients that are used in cheese making?
Good question. Okay. So I want to start out by saying that a lot of people don't realize when they are starting to make cheese that it's actually a form of fermentation, just like sourdough, just like making kombucha.
Like kombucha.
Yeah, exactly. It's a form of
I've never thought of that.
yeah,
Why have I
and so a
not
lot of
thought of
people
that?
don't like you know it, but you don't really think about it.
Yeah.
And it really is. So if you make any other ferment, you're actually automatically ahead in knowing how to make cheese because the
Sweet.
principles of making it are so similar. So the main ingredients that you're going to need to make cheese is milk, and it's got to be really good quality milk. It doesn't have to be raw, although I am definitely a raw milk cheesemaker, but
Yep.
it just has to be really good quality. So when I talk about good quality milk, if I'm specifically talking about raw milk, I'm going to say as fresh as possible
Mm.
from a good quality source. So healthy animals, good clean environment. Well handled, all those kind of things that you're sourcing raw milk to be able to drink for your family, you want to also apply to the cheese that you're going to be making. And above all, is just that fresh, good quality milk. If you
Okay.
are not able to access raw milk, you can still make cheese. You want to source milk that has been pasteurized, but not ultra pasteurized. So, a lot
Oh,
of times,
okay.
if you are looking at the label on the thing, it will say pasteurized if it's just pasteurized, or it will say that ultra pasteurized if it's not. And then, or if it is ultra pasteurized. There we go.
So they do have to label it. You will see
Yeah,
that on the package?
exactly, they
Okay.
label it different, and I know because I'm in Canada, most of the milk
Mhm.
actually is just pasteurized, it's not ultra pasteurized, but I think in the States, that can be a little bit tricky finding a source, so looking local,
Okay.
is gonna be the best, for that, and
Okay.
also trying to go as minimally processed as possible, so, that again falls into just having pasteurized, not that extra step of ultra pasteurizing it, trying to find milk that is not homogenized, so it will still has the ability to creamline where the cream is going to rise to the top, and that's going to help you to make better cheese. But the
Yes.
biggest thing is just don't go with ultra pasteurized. Go with pasteurized. Hopefully
Okay.
non-homogenized if you can. So that's milk, and it is there. I could go and talk about milk for a whole podcast because there's so much to it. But really, just that prioritizing the fresh, good quality is going to put you
Okay.
ahead in cheese making. The next ingredient that you need is a starter culture. So starter cultures in cheese making are lactic bacterias, and which if you have made any other sorts of fermentation, lactic bacterias are really important in fermentation. So you can buy these lactic
Mm.
bacterias online at any cheese supply store. They're going to be listed as starter cultures, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of different options, but just kind of picking the ones for the types of cheeses that you want to make because they always
Okay.
beside them. You can
Okay.
also, it's a little bit more complicated, but you can make your own lactic bacteria at home in the form of a clabber culture. So that's something that I'm really passionate about.
Mhm.
I just wrote a book. I have it here, and I talk a
Yes,
lot
yes.
about clabber culture in this book because I really want people to be able to make a good clabber culture and be able to have success in their cheese making. So it's sort of like
Before
a
you tell
sour.
me the rest, hold up before you go on. For people who are not watching and they're just listening, tell us about your book. What's the title?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sounds good. It is cheese from scratch, natural cheese making from home. Yeah, so it has
Okay.
options for both freeze dried cultures as well as that clabber culture. And so clabber culture is basically the sourdough starter of the cheese making world. So it
Okay.
is something that you're going to take a raw milk culture, you're going to leave raw milk out on your counter until it coagulates, and then you're going to take a little bit of that raw milk and feed it to new fresh milk, and thus you've kind of started it as a culture. So same thing as a sourdough starter, you're going to need to be feeding it every day, you're going to have a discard, and you need to be maintaining it to maintain those lactic bacteria within it and maintain a
Okay.
healthy starter culture. So that's
But how
definitely.
great for the cheese world that the entire world has become sourdough makers, right? Because
Yeah.
that was a huge hurdle for people to ever think they could do sourdough. But now that people know they can do sourdough, the next step is cheese, right? I mean, why not?
Exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah, the whole world needs to be making cheese.
Exactly. It's such a simple jump from baking sourdough. I think all cheesemakers should start out baking sourdough and then dive into cheese making because it really will help you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. That's like the analogy of if you want to learn to play an instrument, a child should always start with piano, and then the world is their stage. They can move on to any instrument, start with sourdough, and then move on to cheese making. I love it. Now, before we go on, though, you mentioned a lactic bacteria, and I want to pause for anybody who's not familiar with fermenting, and I want to assure them that there is good bacteria and there is bad bacteria. So define that a little bit more for us.
Yeah, so lactic bacterias are this head category of types of bacteria that like to feed on sugar. And so we're going to use them in all sorts of different fermentation. For example, if you're making sauerkraut, you're going to have lactic bacteria helping you to ferment that sauerkraut into a good that cabbage into a good nice sauerkraut. So the actual in they're actually named for their love for milk. So lactose is the sugar in milk. So lactic bacteria, they
Mm.
come into milk or they're naturally present within raw milk, and that's how we're able to make a clabber culture. But they come into raw milk and they start to feed on that lactose. And as they feed on it, they break it into smaller sugars because lactose is this giant sugar as far as sugars go. So they need to break it into smaller, more usable sugars for other types of bacteria. And as they do this, the byproduct that they produce is something called lactic acid. So this thus acidifies the milk. And when the milk becomes acidic enough, it's actually going to coagulate. So that's where we get that coagulation when we're keeping that clabber culture. So you can have these lactic bacteria naturally present within the raw milk and cultivate them and create a culture, or you can buy them online at the cheese supply store, and they have certain strains that are known to make good cheese.
Okay. So again, just because in the Western world we're so concerned about keeping our hands clean and using the sanitizers, and we hear the word bacteria and we kind of go, "Oh no."
Yeah.
There's good bacteria, and we have to have good bacteria. We have to have it in our gut. We have to have it in our food. Like, it's a good thing because it fights off the bad bacteria, right? And it makes an environment where the bad stuff can't live. So I just want to reiterate that because I know the word bacteria always scares people. So,
Yes,
so
it
we need
provides.
milk.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say exactly, it provides protection. So we need that lactobacteria in cheese making to do its job so that our milk is safe later on to go on to aging and having other bacterias that are helpful for aging come in and work in our milk. So
Yes.
it's a form of safety for our milk is having that starter
Yes.
culture.
Exactly. So we need milk and we need that starter culture. What else do we need?
The next one would be something called rennet. Now, rennet is used in a lot of cheesemaking recipes. Most aged cheesemaking recipes are going to have rennet, whereas a lot of fresh cheese recipes won't have it added, but some will. So, what rennet is it's an enzyme that causes really quick coagulation in milk. So, when we add it into our milk, it's actually going to coagulate the milk in less than an hour. So, we add it in the
Hmm.
next hour, we've got a gelatinous pot of milk. And so those lactic bacteria, they will cause coagulation in your milk. As I said, once they create that acidic enough environment, that milk is going to coagulate. But this usually takes about 24 hours from the point that you add that starter culture. So in cheese making, we want to really start to be able to manipulate the milk and really control what types of cheeses we're making early on in the cheese making process. So we add in rennet early on in that process to cause that quick coagulation. And then now we can cut those curds into certain sizes that we want, and we can stir them for different amounts of time. And this is going to help us to control where that cheese is going to go. So it's a necessary ingredient in a lot of different cheeses that we're making.
Okay. Is that all we need?
And then the last one would be salt. So salt, just like any other
Salt.
form of fermentation, would be would be kind of the referee in cheese making. So it comes in and it starts to control how quickly those bacteria are fermenting, what types of bacteria are able to ferment. It controls the moisture content in the cheese, and also helps with taste. So salt is the fourth ingredient. So basically, even though there's
Okay.
thousands of different cheeses in the world, they're all basically made from these four main ingredients. There's a few little variations in the ingredients. For example, you can have goat's milk, or you can have cow's milk, or yak
Mm.
milk, or any types of milk.
Mhm.
But it's basically those four ingredients that are going to be the basis of all the different cheeses in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I've only used Redmond real salt for like 7 or 8 years now because I really love the extra trace minerals. Is that a good salt to use for cheese? Because I know the minerals could sometimes change something, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm a super fan of Redmond's as well. I use it all the time in my cooking.
Okay.
I
Oh,
use it
good.
when I'm making
Okay.
fresh cheeses, but I don't use it for making aged cheeses, just because the minerals are kind of gritty, and I do find that that
Okay.
grittiness kind of transfers into the cheese. So they can be used,
Okay.
but I try to just use pure salt. So when you're sourcing salt, you want to make sure that there's no additives in it, no iodine, especially. So the iodine will
Yes.
actually it will kill off your starter cultures. So making sure no iodine or anti-clumping agents in your salt.
Same thing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. So it's the same thing with fermented foods. You have to make sure there's no iodine, which is why Redmond is so good for fermented foods.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, and if that's all you have, you can use Redmond's, like, I've used it before. You just will notice that it will have a little bit of that grittiness, that doesn't get absorbed into the cheese.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. So does it matter what granule you're choosing for your salt? Like there's so many, you can get super fine or you can get more of a kosher. Do you, what kind of, does
Yeah,
that
I like
matter?
to choose fine ground, and I in my book, like, I talk about all, fine ground just because it's the most versatile one. You can use other grounds as well, but you can do the most different salting techniques with the fine ground, so that's the one that I keep on hand.
Okay. And I'm sure your recipe would have to be different if you go with the coarser ground,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
Because,
you would go by
yeah.
weight. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. As a super side note that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, except it's salt, I just found out last week Redmond is coming out with flake salt. Like the world doesn't even know this yet, but I'm so excited.
Exciting. Oh, that's really
I have been, isn't it? I've been wanting that for years. Like I feel like I'm being unloyal and I'm buying cheap stuff when I buy flake salt because you can't buy it from Redmond, right?
exactly.
So
Oh,
anyway, that's a side note,
I like that.
but you can tell folks it's coming.
That's very exciting.
Okay, so I love it that there's only 4 ingredients. That's another reason it tells me, okay, this is doable. It's not
Mhm.
crazy. But what about the dairy? Let's go back to that for a second because we used to have milk cows and it's fantastic to have raw milk daily. I mean, so fantastic, but we no longer do. And it's sometimes hard for me to even find like a good source for raw milk. I know a lot of people sometimes struggle with that. So what tips do you have for us? Like what's the best way to source the best milk?
Yeah, for sure. So make local connections is the best that the best that you can do if you don't have a dairy animal. I think that everybody that does have a dairy animal, cheese making is absolutely absolutely something that you should be doing
Yeah.
because it's the best way to be able to preserve your milk. You're able to take something that is, highly perishable and turn it into something that can be stored for months, if not years. So I think that everybody has a
Yeah.
dairy animal should try some types of cheeses if they can. Now, if you don't have a dairy animal, make local connections. Depending on your state or country, wherever you are, the legalities of raw milk, kind of looking into that. Um, as far as if you are able to find a raw milk source, prioritizing fresh, prioritizing that good quality coming from healthy animals. Cheese
Which
making is
comes back to knowing your source,
yeah,
right? If you can
knowing your
go and visit the farm, see how they milk. Yeah.
yeah, cheese making is often sometimes, just for myself having dairy animals, it's often a really good indication of the health of my animals. Like if everything was going fine and all of a sudden something is not going good in my cheese making, I automatically look back at the health of my animals because it's going to give
Oh,
me that
interesting.
indication of what's going on with their health. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so healthy milk is priority. Also, when I make cheese, I try not to make cheese with milk that's any older than 2 to 3 days, raw milk specifically,
Mm.
just because we all know that raw milk is this living ecology. Got all of these good bacterias and yeast and fungus within it that are good for our gut and make it more digestible for us. But just because we put that raw milk in the refrigerator doesn't mean that it stops living. So it's still going to be feeding and fermenting in that raw milk. And so when we go to use it for cheese making, if it's a little bit older, say it's 5 days or so, our starter cultures are going to have more competition when they come into that milk, and they're also going to have less food. So it kind of sets us
Mm.
off kilter from the very beginning, and it can make cheese making harder. So if you are getting, say, you get raw milk once a week from your source, I would be making cheese on day one, and then maybe by day 2 or 3, you can still be, or maybe on day 3, you can still be drinking it and enjoying it with your family, but not maybe using it for making aged cheeses.
Okay. Wow. That's really good to know. I haven't really thought about that, that it would be competing or competition for the culture. Such a good point to
Yeah, for
keep in
sure, and a
mind.
lot of times it's kind of misconstrued because, people think, "Oh, old milk is gonna be making really good cheese," because it actually, it's headed to cheese
Yeah.
making. If you set raw milk out
Right.
on the counter and you just leave it there for 5 days, it's gonna become some form of cheese.
Right.
Maybe not a very tasty cheese, but it will come some form of cheese. So that, is kind of sometimes a misconception around cheese making, but you really wanna have that fresh milk, and that's been the biggest needle mover for me and making better cheese for my family is using the freshest milk possible in my cheese making.
Mm. Great point. Okay. So all I've made is a couple different soft cheeses. Is that a good place to start? Like, what would you recommend to a newbie what they should do?
Yeah, I think, soft cheeses are an excellent place to start. They just help you get kind of some foundational skills of, what it's like to culture milk and what it's like to strain it and, hang it. So those are really great
Mhm.
places to start. Now, if you have, a good frequent raw milk access, or if you have your own dairy cow, I think that clabber is the greatest spot to start. So if you start
Hmm.
keeping a clabber culture, and you just put raw milk out on the counter. You let it sit there till it coagulates. You take a little bit of it, feed it to new fresh milk, and then every day continue to feed it like a sourdough starter. Um, Now, this is a really great place to start because then you can take that and you can make some really simple cheeses. You can make a bigger clabber and just strain it off into cream cheese, or you can make a bigger clabber and just
Wait, is that all that cream cheese is?
yeah, it can be, there's clabber cream cheese. Yeah, you can just have a large you just make instead of making a small jar of clabber, you're just gonna make a large jar of clabber, and
Wow.
then you can just strain it through a cheesecloth, and you've got cream cheese. Or you can make a whole
Wow.
pot of clabber, and then, when it's coagulated, just lightly cook it on the stove, and now you have cottage cheese. So it's a really
Wow.
simple way to you only need 2 ingredients for it, or I guess 3 if you're gonna add salt in. But it's a really simple way to kinda get your foot in the door, and then once you are really comfortable with keeping a clabber culture and knowing how to feed it, then you can jump into more advanced cheeses. So that's if you have access to frequent raw milk, but I think that is a really great place to start. If you do have that access. Now, if you don't have access to fresh raw milk, then you could go with any sort of cream cheese or a cottage cheese, anything like that. Those are basically the same principles, but you're just having to culture the milk with that freeze dried culture versus
Okay.
having that clabber.
Let's pause for a second. If you grow any food at any level, you really need to know about cover crops. They are fast growing plants that are planted in late summer or fall in the areas of the garden that have stopped producing well. Behind the scenes, they are hard at work improving your soil's health, adding important organic matter back into your soil, and improving the very structure of the dirt, making it more fertile. In my ultimate guide to cover crops, I break down all the kinds. I tell you my personal favorites. I tell you when and how to terminate your cover crops and so much more. And it's all totally free. Solelyrested.com/cover, COVER. Also, I have a special limited time discount code there for you just for the next few weeks. So you can save up to 20% on your order from True Leaf Market, which is my go to for all things cover crops and a whole lot more. In fact, I share with you all of my favorite things that I always stock up on from True Leaf Market. And my ultimate guide to cover crops as well at solelyrested.com/cover. Don't miss this discount, guys. It is only there a short time. solelyrested.com/COVER. Okay. Now your book is coming. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a copy yet, but do you go into all those things that you just mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I talk about
Okay.
talk about just a lot of. So it's kind of complicated when you look at a cheese making recipe. And so there's all these different recipes, but when you really break it down, a lot of them are super similar. Like, what is the difference between making, say, a cottage cheese and making something like a quark, which is like a cream cheese? Really, the only difference is one is cooked and one is strained. So I go a lot into
Hmm.
those kind of differences in there that you could just maybe you could make both of those out of one pot, and some of it you could just take it and strain it, and some of it you could take it and cook it, and then now you have two different dairy products that are very different, but they also were so similar to make and kind of fit into your lifestyle really easy that way.
I love it. So it sounds to me, like I said, I haven't yet got my hands on your book. I can't wait to get my hands on it. But it sounds to me like you are really breaking this down for somebody who literally doesn't know what they're talking about, like me.
Yeah.
And you're holding our hand and walking us through it, it sounds like. And it's hard to do, Robin. It's hard to be a good teacher of something when you've been doing it for a decade. But it sounds like you took a step back And your book really does do that.
Yeah, it for sure does. It starts like, introduction is just introducing you to the ingredients that you need. And then the chapter 2 is talking about setting up your kitchen and the equipment you need and stuff. And then, so we go through different chapters. So the first chapter is, just getting your foot into dairy processing, like making yogurt and butter and sour cream, like those really simple dairy products. And then building your skills up until the very end chapter. You're making cheddars and Colbys and Goudas, like those more advanced type.
Oh,
It just builds
Gouda.
on your
That is
skills because
Bill's
there's so much substantial
favorite.
building.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, stupid question. It shows you how I know nothing about cheese making. How do you make a smoked Gouda versus a regular
talk
Gouda
about
or
that in
whatever, smoky
a
Gouda?
sec.
Yeah?
Yeah, so you're just gonna smoke it once it's aged. You have to do a really cold smoke. So I think, the temperature off my
That sounds contradictory. What really? A cold smoke. Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
so I think it's, like, the highest you wanna get is, like, 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh,
But
wow.
I'd have to look at the actual number, but,
But
um
you have a smoker that you're doing
yeah,
it
we
in?
have a
Like
smoker,
a
and so you just wanna have it to like, the lowest temperature you can get it, put it at the top rack, and just do a really light cold smoke for about an hour, and then, you can either eat it right away because it still tastes good right away, or you can,
Mhm.
let it sit for a couple weeks and it will get more pronounced as it sits, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so that's done, yeah.
So
Just
another stupid question, I'm just gonna throw them all at you.
There's no
When
stupid
you're
questions.
when you're standing there at, like, Trader Joe's and you're looking at all these amazing cheeses, sometimes they're wrapped in a thick wax.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're in, like, a thinner wax that I think you can eat. I don't know, maybe? And
Mm.
then sometimes they don't have any kind of wax. Like, what's the difference in those?
Yeah, for sure. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can age a cheese. So you can either vacuum seal it or you can wax it. There's different waxing methods. So probably that thicker wax you're talking about would be where they're actually like melting a whole pot of wax and then dipping the cheese in,
Oh,
and letting
wow.
that side dry, dip the other side in. So you get
Okay.
that really nice thick wax. Whereas the thinner one is probably more of a painted on method, which you wouldn't want to eat, but it looks really
Okay.
so vacuum
Okay.
sealing and waxing are kind of interchangeable in the cheesemaking world. Um,
Oh, so I don't have to be able to wax it to
no,
make a
you
really good
don't.
hard cheese.
Yeah. In
Okay.
fact, like, I don't really like waxing cheese. I haven't waxed cheese in, like, probably 6 years because it's so
It
messy.
sounds complicated. I think I would burn myself.
It's kinda hard, like, especially when you got little kids and stuff. Like, I always
I'm
used to be
sure.
worried that they were in the kitchen and it's hot and there's a fire risk, and,
Yeah.
all the things. So I do teach you how to wax cheese in the book, but, and I mostly vacuum seal my cheeses or
Okay.
form their own natural rinds, which is really fun as well. It's a
Oh,
little bit more advanced, but it's also cheese making, there is so many different levels of learning. Like, the day that I die, I will still be have more to learn about cheese making. So,
yeah.
that's kind of the fun
I
thing.
mean, that's true of life though, right? If you
Yeah.
ever think you're done learning, you are not as smart as you think you are.
Exactly, and, like, the
Yeah.
cool thing is that you can know nothing and you can still make amazing cheese, and you can know so much
Uh,
and you can still make amazing cheese, but, so
yeah. Now
there's
I thought you were gonna say you can know so much and still have a failure too,
Oh,
right?
yes, for sure, yeah, at all levels. Like, this morning, for example, I'm actually filming a course for the book, and this morning I went to
Oh.
film some of, a sour cream that I made yesterday, and I over fermented it because I used cream that was, like, 4 days old, and so now it was all
Oh.
bubbly and gross and would not taste good, so I got to film a troubleshooting.
I was gonna ask you if you still used it because
Yeah,
there's still learning to be
yeah,
happening there.
exactly, because that
Yeah.
happens, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And also, like
Okay, so
sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just
No,
gonna
no,
say
go ahead.
also fermentation is, like in a lot of times it's very controlled, but a lot of times it's very wild, and so we're not in control. The bacterias are in control, and we're just trying to steer the
Totally.
the ship in the direction that we want it to go, so
For sure. And I haven't experienced this, but I've heard of people that have trouble with fermenting, whether it be vegetables or sourdough, because of the bacteria in their home, that it's just not quite conducive to fermenting. Have you heard of this? Does that ever impact cheese making?
I don't know about I could definitely see that if you didn't have a strong starter culture and you had other bacterias in your home, they could for sure, take control of your ferment.
Right.
Ferments can cross contaminate too. For example, like I
Yes.
have kombucha going, I have it on the other side of the kitchen, and my clabber culture on the other side, just to keep
Hmm.
some distance between the two. There's a lot of similarities between the ferments and the bacteria that are used in it, though. For example, this guy named David Asher, he wrote the foreword for my book, but he is like
Mm.
the king of clabberculture. He really introduced us all back to clabberculture, even though it's a really old skill. It was something that was kind of forgotten. Anyway, so he
Mhm.
knows a lot about clabberculture, and so he talks about in one of his books, he talks about how you can actually start a clabberculture using a little bit of sourdough, or you can start a sourdough starter using a little bit of clabberculture.
Oh,
Um, and I
interesting.
haven't tried it myself, but I can see the science behind it, and I could see that that would be something that, might actually work, so,
Very cool.
yeah.
Now, if you tell me you can use a SCOBY to make cheese, I'd really be shocked. I'm
Yeah.
guessing you can't do that.
Although sometimes if you let like clabberculture accidentally go too far, like if you leave it on the counter for like a week or maybe 2 weeks, you get a little like symbiotic
You get
yeast
a s
colony on the top of your
interesting.
yeah, you get a little jelly on the top there.
Interesting. So you would just peel that off and, like, feed it to the chickens or put it in the
Yeah, exactly, and
compost?
at that point, I'm trying to make sure that I'm feeding my clabberculture every day to keep it good for cheese making, so at that point, the whole thing would just be going to the chicken.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
but the
pigs will
chickens
love it too, I'm sure.
yeah.
So, with kombucha, if you let it over ferment, it can get so vinegary and you're just, I usually start again. I'll use that as vinegar in some way, whether it's for some salad dressing that I'm making or a cleaner for the kitchen. I'll still use it, but I'm not going to make kombucha with it if it goes too far. Does that happen with cheese other than what, like you just said?
Yeah, so over fermentation, so there's a little bit of confusion, and I think that if we maybe it's not confusion, it's just we can't know for sure. So without lab testing of our cheeses and having a microscope and really having that microbiology degree behind us, we can't know when we have something that looks contaminated or over fermented if it was actually a bad contamination that came in or if it was just the raw milk actually over fermented and just went a little bit too far. So we can't know. It's basically going to look kind of the same. You're going to have air bubbles in it, so it's kind of like looks like a sourdough starter where it rises up and you've got all
Hmm.
the little air bubbles in it. So that's what you're going to see
Mhm.
with cheese making as well. You'll have a lot of gas holes and stuff in there. And so in some cheeses, for example, if you're going to make Swiss cheese, you're expecting to have holes in there, and so you're
Mhm.
cultivating a certain environment for those. They're called propionic bacteria to actually start to be able to ferment in that cheese and create that gas. But sometimes you have that when you didn't mean to have it, and so that's where it's kind of comes to like this gray area of should I just feed to this to the chickens because maybe it's contaminated by something I didn't want, or did it just over ferment because I maybe had the temperature a little bit too warm, or I left it without salting for a little bit too long. So in the beginning, you really have to kind of go on that side of err on that side of caution because you really don't know. You don't have the experience to back it up. Of, is this normal or is this something
Right.
that maybe is not safe to consume? So you really, I like in the beginning of my cheese making journey, I probably threw away a lot of cheeses that maybe today I wouldn't. Um,
Mm.
but as you kind of get that, what is normal and what is not normal under your belt, and you get that experience,
Mhm.
then you start to see, sometimes you just have a little bit of over fermentation, or you look in a cheese and there's a few little gas bubbles, and you're not really concerned about it because everything else was normal and you knew your milk quality was good. So that just comes, it's one of those things that just has to come with experience. And at the end of the day, it's never worth losing sleep over. So if you ever worried about it, the chickens or the pigs will be very happy.
Yes. I do love that if you have a homestead, nothing's going to go to waste. Whether you make a mistake or not, somebody's going to be enjoying and profiting from it. So, okay, one last question. I know you said we don't have to have fancy equipment, but if we were going to have some, how do you choose what should you start with if you're going to buy some equipment?
Yeah, so to make those fresh cheeses that we talked about, the ones that you're going to get going, you probably already have everything you need in your kitchen. The biggest thing would be a thermometer. So different cheeses are going to have you heat them out to certain temperatures. So it's helpful to have a thermometer. Any thermometer will do as long as it kind of ranges between 60 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, or 190 probably would be the highest you would need it to go. And then just a pot, stainless steel is the best, but you can use like I use my enameled cast iron pot sometimes for making cheese. Try to avoid aluminum because cheese is so acidic; it will caused
Mm.
like that breakdown of the aluminum. And I did used to use an aluminum cheese pot, and then there was so much pitting in it, and I thought, man, that all went into my
Oh.
food. Like that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so try to
Yeah.
avoid the aluminum if you can. And then a cheesecloth. So flour sack towels are my favorite cheesecloth. I just buy them at Walmart, or you can get them at Target
Mhm.
or Amazon, anything
Yep.
like that. What else would you need? Just a variety of different strainers, and then you can go and make all sorts of different fresh cheeses. When you want to advance into kind of more pressed cheeses, so I do talk about how to set up a bucket press in here. So it's just two 5-gallon
Mm.
buckets and a cheese form, and you're able to make
Wow.
some pressed cheeses just with that to get you going. And then it's not like the most amazing press ever, but it gets you going. And then if you're like, I
Yeah.
actually like doing this, I want to make more cheese, then you could advance into a fancier press or something like that.
I love that. That's awesome. I've
Yeah.
never seen that, a 2-bucket press. I'm so glad that you put that in the book.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's super handy. I used to like I'm a bucket press is kind of a new idea for me over the last like I saw other people online doing it and I was like, that's genius. Cause when I started and I didn't like the press that I got in that kit that I talked about before. I didn't
Yeah.
it wasn't my favorite. So when I started, I actually was just using like a stack of books and I would kind of wedge
Mm.
them under my counter and it worked, but a lot of times it would tip over and stuff like this. So this stops it from tipping over and making a mess.
Perfect, and it cleans up your counter space a little bit too.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Yeah, and then just a variety of different sizes of cheese forms depending on the types of cheeses that you're making, but I kinda recommend getting those after you have some of that fresh cheese under your belt and just really deciding what your next move is gonna be with cheese making and then buying a form that fits that next cheese that you're planning on making. Some of them can be DIY too. For example, if you're gonna make like a brie or a feta, you can just poke holes into like an old yogurt container and use that.
Mm.
Um, if you're gonna make a pressed cheese, I've made a lot of kinda DIY versions of, pressed cheese forms in the past, and at the end of the day, they're only like 12 bucks, so I would probably recommend buying one. The biggest thing is finding
Good
something that
point.
will fit in there that
Mhm.
will actually fit on top of your cheese form because you can, like, screw holes into a bucket and stuff, but having that follower that's gonna press down on your cheese was the biggest kind of
Oh,
hurdle in.
such a good point. I'm glad you said that because, I mean, people do that and you don't even think about, well, it's just $12. I could just buy what I'm supposed to.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
me, with syrup making,
Mhm.
in the maple syrup world, the big thing is people that are new to it insist I can just use an old t-shirt to filter the sap. I don't
Yeah,
need to get any fancy filter. And they will work at this for years and they'll get only halfway good syrup after
yeah,
all their boiling. And it's like, guys, a filter costs like 14.95. You can buy a really good filter and the result is so much better. So there's a similar thing in the cheese world too, huh?
exactly, yeah, it's just gonna save you so much hard like, just such a hard time because I did do that for years, and I'm like, "Why did I do that?" So
Yeah, yeah.
silly.
It's simple little things like that that we
Yeah,
need folks like you around helping us understand. So thank you for what you're doing because to a family who needs cheese,
yeah,
you are a very important person. So thank
absolutely.
you. Tell everybody who's listening if they haven't already followed you in all the places where they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm pretty active over on Instagram at cheese from scratch. So there's a little underscore after each of the words there. I also have a website. I've got some recipes on my website, like a blog kind of thing. I have a YouTube channel, so I post a video every Monday. Although I've missed the last 2 Mondays because I was kind of busy. It's summertime,
Yeah.
but
Life. I know, summer, yes.
I'll come back to it. Yes.
Yep, yep. So what's the name of your site and your YouTube?
Cheesefromscratch.com is my website, and then Cheese from Scratch for YouTube as
Okay, so everywhere they look, they can find you as Cheese from Scratch.
well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to kind of hold my hand and walk me through this. Once your book arrives in the mail, I'm going to devour it almost literally. And I'll probably be reaching out with questions.
Yeah, for sure. And if anyone has questions, just reach out. Yeah, email is probably actually I should give my email.
Yeah,
cheesefromscratch@outlook.com is my email, and that's sometimes the easiest way to get a hold of me, just because Instagram things get lost under
they do
buried.
so quickly, don't they? I love Instagram, but it's so easy to lose something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Robin. This has been great. I'm going to go find some cheese to eat for my
Yeah.
snack now.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you, Michelle.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Well, thanks for listening, friends. I'm pretty sure you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Robin is so sweet and she's so good at just breaking things down and making us realize that something that's so intimidating doesn't need to be. And it is doable in simple steps, right? And also, if you want to check out my brand new, just released pantry checklist, you will appreciate it. It's going to help you with those simple ingredients, like we were talking about with Robin. It's just four simple things that you need to make your cheese, but it's important to get the right ingredients. So go check out all the ingredients that are in my pantry and in our home for DIY non toxic things that we're making, as well as all the great food. And the best part, it is loaded with discount codes. Go to solelyrested.com/pantry, Pantry. And there you will also find that amazing salt that Robin and I were talking about. Depending on when the production time comes out, by the way, I mentioned first time ever, I mentioned it anywhere as I was talking with Robin about flake salt from Redmond's. If that is available, it's going to go on that pantry checklist right away so you can find out where to grab some. I don't know how long it's going to be though. I'm not sure when it's going to be released to the public. So I'll keep you posted on that. So anyway, solelyrested.com/pantry to dive into all those discount codes on the best ingredients and go find Robin Jackson on all the places cheese making from scratch. She's a gem. You're going to love what she is teaching there. So thanks guys. And remember, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it is definitely a good life.